morning. We're learning the Nishmas Mendel, Mariam Bas Kalman Ruvain, her Neshama Shem Aliyah. We are on Mem Tes Amud Beis. We got a little bit, nicely through. 1 second. We're at the 2 dots, right? So we're almost about halfway, not halfway, like about a third of the way. Somewhere, I don't know, something like that. The first word's Hadar Yasve, and if you're in the art school, it's 49b1. It's like the third to last paragraph. Yeah. Okay, so 49b1, Hadar Yasve, Mem Tes Amud Beis by the 2 dots. Okay, so Hadar Yasve, V'Kamen Vayelu. We had the same Amoraim sitting around. So we had the last discussion. We had Rav Yonasan ben Achinai, Rav Yonasan ben Elazar, Mechina ben Chama. They were together and they were having conversations. So we had one conversation, and now we're going on, as the Gemara often does. It goes on like a bit of a tangent. It's not really. It jumps to another topic. It's still related to Hilchos Shabbos or the general topic of Shabbos, but it's not related to Hatmana and what we were talking about until now. But they were Hadar Yasve V'Kamen Vayelu. They were sitting together and they were discussing the following question, or they're asking the following question: Haditznan, that we learned in a Mishnah. We're going to learn this Mishnah soon. Avos Malachos Arbaim Chatzar Achas. That there are 39, or rather, more accurately, there are the Avos Malachos, which means the primary Malachos, are 40 minus 1, meaning there are 39 Malachos. Can I get me? Like, what do they correspond to? What do these 39 Malachos correspond to? So Amar Lahu, Rabbi Chanina bar Chama, Keneged Avodos HaMishkan. They correspond to the Avoda, the labors, that took place in the Mishkan. There are 39 different activities that were needed primarily for the construction of the Mishkan. And the malachos that are asur on Shabbos, the things with the work that is forbidden on Shabbos, correspond to the work that was done to build the Mishkan. Okay, we'll come back and unpack that soon, but we'll see another opinion. Amar Rav Yonasan Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Yonasan ben Elazar disagrees. He says, Kach Amar Rab Shimon Rabbi Yossi ben Lakonia. He quotes the following teaching: Keneged melacha melachto umelecha shebatorah arbaim chatzar achas. It corresponds to the fact that it says melacha, different permutations of the word melacha, which means work, 49 times in the Torah, 39 times in the Torah. Okay, so there are 39 times that the word melacha is found in the Torah. So again, the question is, where do we get this idea that there are 39 activities that are forbidden biblically, midoraisa, in the Torah? One says corresponding to the work in the Mishkan. The other says, if you count in the Torah how many times it says melacha, which means work, it's 39 times. 39 times, okay?
That just seems, so what? Why would that?
No, well, the Torah says, okay, so important. The Torah says, do not do malacha on Shabbos. Okay, let's take a step back. The Torah says, don't do work on Shabbos. It's very undefined in terms of what work is. Doesn't mean you can't give a drush on Shabbos, because that's work. I don't know, right? What's included? What are you not allowed to do? What is the word malacha? Like, how do you define the parameters of malacha? So one opinion says, well, look what they built in the Mishkan. That's the primary malacha. The idea is, okay, we'll come back to the idea behind that, but that's the primary place where you find malacha being performed. Okay, that's the source. Others says, again, everyone's going to be, we're grappling because there is no definition of what malacha is in the Torah. Just says, don't do malacha. Could be anything. You can don't go on a long walk on Shabbos, right? I mean, anything can be included. So at least we have some level of limit in the sense that it's 39 from the fact that it counts 39 in the Torah. Now, it seems like even according to the second opinion that says that it's 39 times in the Torah, it seems like they're still going to be, they're still going to learn it from the Mishkan. It's like the argument between them, it seems to be very limited. In other words, it sounds like everyone's ultimately going to agree that the Mishkan is the source of the different malachos, the different prohibited activities. One says, we just know what was done at the Mishkan, that's why we know 39. The other says, theoretically, it could be much more. The way we know to limit it to 39 is from the fact that it says malacha throughout the Torah, but I also agree that when we think about which activities are prohibited, we're also going to learn it from the Mishkan. Right? So it's almost, they're both learning it from the Mishkan, but one of them says just by counting. The other says we know the limit from the fact that if you count in the Torah, it says 39 times malacha. That seems to be the debate, okay? But Rav Yosef, so we have a question. Rav Yosef had the following question based on these 2 opinions. Vayavo habaisa la'asos malachto. So the Torah says about Yosef, that Yosef came to the house. This is referring to when he was a slave. And the Torah tells us that it was a day that no one was around. And Yosef came to the house that the wife Potiphar was in, to do his work. So Miminyanahu alo, is that pasuk, is that the word malacha part of the count or not? So Amar le Abaya says, V'leise sefer Torah v'limnei. Let's get a Torah and count. In other words, let's figure this out. Are there more than 39 times? Okay, so we're going to count. We're going to figure out which ones are included, which ones are not included. Milo Amar Rabba Bar Bar Chana Amar Rav Yochanan, regarding a similar discussion where there was a discussion about a word in the Torah, and there was discussion. Rav Bar Chana said in the name of Yochanan, Lo zazu misham ad sheviu sefer Torah u'mina'um. They didn't move from there while they were having this discussion. So they brought a sefer Torah and started counting. So he says, let's do the same. Let's go get a Torah. Amalei, Rav Yosef says, no. We didn't do count it. I'll explain to you what my question was. The reason I'm uncertain is because there's another word malacha, which I'm also uncertain about. At the end of the building of the Mishkan, the Torah tells us that the malacha was enough. The malacha haisadayim. The Torah says that there was enough malacha. Okay? Miminyanahu. Is that word malacha part of the count or not? Okay, v'ham command amar. Okay, so let's explain what that means. The Torah, when it's describing the fact that towards the end of the building of the Mishkan, it says the malacha was enough. Now, there are two ways to understand that. One is they finished building, and it was enough. They finished building what they had to do. The other is when you say like work could be like a more general discussion, like the job was done, but it's not necessarily referring to actual activity. You could be saying like they finished their objective of doing everything they had to do for the Mishkan. That's one way of looking at malacha, like work. When I say, are you working, right? So work could be like I'm toiling, I'm doing activity, and work could mean like I'm accomplishing certain goals. It's like, is this working? Is this, when I say the word, is this working? Does that mean like, does that mean you're actually doing activity? Or like, it means like, are you attaining some goal? So in the end of the Mishkan, there is that word malacha that could be understood as an activity, that they finished doing all the work they had to do. They finished building the Mishkan, they finished building the Kiyar, they finished building the Shulchan. Or does it mean they finished their objective? And therefore, the question would be, is that in the count? Okay, so is that in the count? B'minyanahu, v'hakamad amar lasas trachav nichnas, and therefore, if it's going to be included, meaning if you want to say that it means that they actually that the work was done, the pasuk by the Mishkan means the work was done, and it's referring to actual malacha, actual activity, then that means the pasuk by Yosef cannot be understood to mean malacha work. Rather, it has to be understood as a euphemism. As the Gemara in Sota tells us, that there's a way of understanding the pasuk that when Yosef came to the house to do his work, it didn't mean that he came to the house to do his work, meaning he came to do his job like his regular job and to do work, but rather means he came to be together with the wife of Potiphar. That's what the pasuk means, right? So in other words, each of these psukim could be interpreted in two ways. Right? So in other words, like this, you have, 40 places that you have the word malacha written in the Torah. Okay? Two of those places, the words are open to interpretation. And so whichever way you read one, you're going to have to read the other. So if you read the word by Mishkan to mean they finished doing the work of the Mishkan, that means that's counted as part of the count, then that means the word malacha by Yosef has to be understood euphemistically, and means it wasn't that he went to go to the house to do work, but rather he went to go to the house to be with the wife Potiphar, and therefore that word malacha is not counted. Alternatively, if you want to understand the word at the end of the building of the Mishkan as a more broad term, they finished their objective, then you could understand the word by Yosef as and he went to the house literally to go do work, and therefore that's counted as part of the 39, right? So one of them has to give in order to count as part of the 39. Yeah. Make sense? Okay, so that's what Odilma, the Gemara gives the opposite thing. Vayavo habaisa lasos malachta minyanahu. Or alternatively, you could say he came to the house to do his work, meaning literally, he came to do chores, work on the house. The hayvam lacha sadayam hachi ka'amar. And then going back to where it says that the work was enough by the Mishkan, there, what it means is a shlim le avidza, that they finished their tasks, they finished their objective, but it's not a reference to actual work. Okay, so bottom line is, one thing has to give. Again, there are 40 times that the word malacha is found. Two of them can be interpreted in different ways, and the way you read one is going to impact the way you read the other. By the end work of the Mishkan, it could mean they finished their objective, or it could mean they finished their work. If it means objective, then by Yosef, it means he was actually doing work. If it means that they finished the work, then by Yosef, it's meant to be read euphemistically. One way or another, we're going to have 39. He's questioning which is the right way to interpret it. Teku, he says, we don't know. We're leaving it unresolved. Now, the Rishonim do point out that if you do a count, I can't believe none of you asked this because it says malacha more than 39 times. How can you not? Oh, Max, you're about to ask that, right? How many times? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah. I'm just messing. What's it called? But yeah, it says malacha more than 40 times, and they have many. There's like a whole arichos, a whole long discussion about which times it says malacha are included, which are not. Okay, we're not going to get into that too deeply. Let's go a little bit further about this discussion. Tanya, command to Amar Keneged Avodas HaMishkan. There's a brisa which seems to support, or does support, the idea that it's 39 corresponding to the work in the Mishkan. Now, again, as we said, both Amoraim understand that it's about the Mishkan. Just one says it's not just about the Mishkan. You also need the word malacha and amount of times it's listed. The other is it's just about the Mishkan. And so this brisa, which just mentions the Mishkan and doesn't mention the word malacha, would seem to support that approach. To Tanya, we have a brisa: Ein chayavin ela al malacha shekiyotzev ha'isam Mishkan. You're only going to be liable for a korban. It's only doraisa if it's a malacha, like meaning work that was done in the Mishkan. Heim zaru va'atam latizru. In the Mishkan, they had to plant. They planted for the spices, etc., to prepare them. You can't plant. Heim katzru. They harvested. They reaped. Va'atam latizru. You're not allowed to reap. Heim helu as a krashim mikarka lagala. They picked up boards from the ground, which is considered rishus harabim, and they put it onto the wagon, which is a private domain, rishus yachid. Va'atam latachnis rishus harabim rishus yachid. You cannot go ahead and bring things from the public domain to the private domain. They brought things from the wagon to the ground. You can't take things from the private domain to the public domain. They transfer things from the wagon to the wagon, private to private. You cannot bring things from the private domain to the private domain. Ask the Gemara. If you bring something from the private domain to the private domain, there's nothing wrong with that, right? From one private domain to another, there's nothing wrong. What you're not allowed to do is go from private domain to private domain with a public domain in the middle. In other words, if let's say you have two houses and you have a public domain over here, you can't throw something from one house to the other going through a public domain. So bottom line is, you see from this brisa that we're talking about learning from the Mishkan, and it doesn't mention anything about the count of 39 from the word malacha. Rather, it's learned from the Mishkan alone. Excuse me for 1 second. It's an allergy morning. Yes. Okay, excuse me. Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's just unpack this idea of learning from the Mishkan. What's this all about? So, there's two ideas. I mean, the idea is in the Mishkan itself, there's creative activity, right? When we think about malacha, it's just important to define it. Malacha does not mean you can't work. You can't do like hard things. You're allowed to, I remember I had one of my closest friends growing up in high school lived on the 16th floor of an apartment building, and for whatever reason, we all had houses. We all lived in homes. He lived in an apartment. For some reason, that was the place we hung out. Go figure. And so on Shabbos, we literally, and we're 16, 17, so we're just literally going up and down all of Shabbos. And it's ridiculous, right? But bottom line is we're toiling heavily, whatever. We're jogging up the stairs, jogging down the stairs. But that's not malacha. Why is it not malacha? It's not malacha because the term, in the Mishkan, it is, malacha is not, there's avoda and there's malacha. Avoda is the term we use in Mitzrayim. That avoda means labor. Malacha is creative work, right? That's what we're staying away from. The idea is creative work, that we are, the simple understanding is that, there are many commonalities between the building of the Mishkan and Ma'aseh Bereshis. A lot of the terminology is identical. That when God created the world and the Mishkan, they're almost parallel to one another. There's a lot to say about that, but they both represent a sense of creation. What we're doing on Shabbos by not working is we're saying we are not creators, right? The idea is more the sophisticated form of work, a creative work, right? Baking a cake is not hard necessarily. Well, hard for me, but it's not hard for most people. What you're doing is creating or taking something which wasn't and you're making something that is, right? So the idea is that God is the creator of the world. One day a week, we're saying we are not the creators of the world. That's the basic idea, and that's what we're learning from the Mishkan, which is a representation of the creation of the world. There is a very famous idea, which is probably made most famous by a book called The Sabbath, and that speaks about the fact that Shabbos and Malach, there's this correspondence that in as much as the Mishkan is a sanctuary. That's what it is, sanctuary in space. The Shabbos, which is probably the more unique Jewish idea, is what we call a sanctuary in time, right? And then the way to conceptualize Shabbos is in as much as, if you walk into the Kotel or Meretz Hashem, walk into the Azara of the Beis HaMikdash, into the corridor of the Beis HaMikdash, you're walking into this special place, and you walk in, there's something, you feel different. You're walking into a space. We're meant to conceptualize Shabbos as some form of a structure in space, in time, excuse me. That this time is you're kind of walking into the gates of the time. When you walk into Shabbos, you start Shabbos, lighting the candles, starting Kabbalah Shabbos, you're walking into a sanctuary. It's essentially a sanctuary that we're constructing something in space. Sorry, I keep on saying that, in time. In other words, in as much as to walk into a physical structure, you have a wall around it, you have doors around it, you have gates around it, so too Shabbos has certain prohibitions And what that allows for, it creates something. In other words, many people push back. Yeah, many people love the beauty of Shabbos. They don't love the restrictions of Shabbos, right? I'll just take the Shabbos meals and the davening and the whatever. I'll miss the restrictions. It's like saying, I want to have a palace without walls. You can't do it, right? You need to have the walls around the palace. That's what creates the structure of the palace. And inside of it, you have the thing, right? What we think about currently, what we do in Yerushalayim is the kotel. It's literally a wall, right? It's the wall. It's the definer. It's what creates a demarcation in space. That's what makes it holy. Similarly, the restrictions create a certain space in time. It creates a certain something in time that allows for a blocking out of others. It demarcates between what's unholy and holy, between what we're, between Friday and Shabbos and Sunday. And in that space, we're able to engage and able to connect to Hashem. So the notion is to almost like imagine a Mishkan in time, and that's what Shabbos is, and that's the correspondence between the Mishkan in space and the Mishkan in time being Shabbos. So there's a deep connection between the two of them. Okay, let's go a little bit further. Yeah, okay. Let's go a little bit further. We're going back to the Mishnah. We're coming back to our topic of insulation and a very important idea about muktzah. So the Mishnah said, "Begizei tzemer ve'metaltzlin." You're allowed to insulate with wool shearings, but you're not allowed to move them. Okay, wool shearings can be used, but you for hatmana, but they are muktzah. Amarava loshanu elash lo taman bahen. That the Mishnah said that you can't use, that you can't move them. The way to understand it is like this, is to read the Mishnah. You're allowed to insulate with wool shearings. If you used wool shearings, even though they're normally muktzah, but because you use them for atmana, they are no longer muktzah. But if you did not use them for atmana, then they are muktzah, right? That's mean lo shanu elash lo tamim behen. That we said they're muktzah is only if you didn't insulate with them. Aval tamim behen metaltlin osan. But if you insulated them, meaning you used them for something other than making a shirt or whatever, then they're no longer muktzah. Eisvei hahu merabanan bar Yomi l'Rava. Okay, but a certain student who was there for one day asked Rava. Now, like on the one, there's two ways to understand this. One is like literally the guy who just walked in, like asked, like, excuse me, asked this question and like completely destroyed him. There's another way. There's a Gemara Chagiga. It talks about Rav Idi Bar Hava, I think, who was this like amazing thing where he used to travel 3 months. He lived far away. He used to travel 3 months to come to the Beis Medrash for one day. He would come for one day, travel back home. And then he would travel 3 months, come for one day, and travel back home. He spent 2 days a year in the Beis Medrash, 6 months a year, 12 months a year traveling, and that was his thing. Okay, not for the faint of heart, not for everyone, but whatever. He so valued the spending of the time in Beis Medrash that he would travel to such extent. He was the one who was called the one day guy, So whether it's like this tremendous scholar, one day person was just inspired by him, or this guy who stood in the back and had the audacity but asked a good question, he raised his hand and asked the following question to Rabbah. What's the question? The Mishnah said you could insulate with wool, but you can't move them. And then it said, Keitzad hu oseh. What do you do? In other words, the Mishnah went on and said, you're allowed to use wool, but you can't move it. Okay, so again, the way Rav understands those words is, you're allowed to use wool, and you move that wool that you used for hatmana, for insulation, is not muktzah. But in a situation where you didn't use it for atmana, then it's not muktzah. But the next line of the Mishnah says, what do you do when you use insulation of wool? And it gives this whole complicated, notlos akiso veinoflos, you take the cover and it falls off, implying that you cannot move it directly, even though you use different insulation, right? So, Rava said, that the Mishnah said that they are muktzah is only when person did not designate it for hatmana. But if a person designated it forever for hatmana mitzatz, you could then move it. Okay, so the difference is, so basically, and this is a general rule. Let's say you have a rock. Okay, so what comes out of it here, according to Salach, is if you used a rock to like hold down your papers, it's not enough to make it non-muktzah. But if you said, I'm going to use this rock forever, now it's a beautiful rock. My kids come back whenever they go on a hike, like their pockets filled with like all these, I'm like, yeah. Okay, and we try to throw them out when they're not looking, right? So basically, that rock, where they say, I'm going to keep this for life. This was my paperweight rock. This is my, whatever rock. That rock is okay, but just using it once is not enough. Okay, it's an important halacha when it comes to muktzah. If you want to go and designate a muktzah item for something else, according to this opinion, you have to designate it for life. It's Barnami, Ki Asa Ravin, Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Asi ben Shol, Amar Rabbi. It's only when you designate it. When you didn't designate it, that's when it's muktzah. If you designate it for life, then you are allowed to use it. Ravina gives a different answer. He says, no, really, even using it once is enough to take it out of the laws of muktzah. Bishal heftek shanu, when is it in the Mishnah that it is still muktzah? Is when you use the wool from a warehouse. When you use wool that's already been sitting in a warehouse, you take it out of the warehouse, and then you start using it, it's still warehouse wool, and therefore it's still muksa. That wool is going to remain muksa. But regular wool in your house, which it could be used for clothing, could be used for something else, there, you don't have to designate it for lifetime. We have a price that supports this. Wool shearings of a warehouse may not be moved. But if the householder prepared them, then they could be moved. Okay, so bottom line is we have a general machlokas about muksa, which is, when I have an item which is muksa, and I want to designate it for non-muksa use. Okay, so when I go to a hotel for Shabbos. So how do you go in and out? You have the card. So basically what oftentimes take is like one of the cards that they use for swiping, which is typically muksa, to use that as designate to close the door. I had my phone. It's the only valuable thing I have in my life. I put the door, whatever. They want to steal my socks. It's fine, basically, but whatever. Basically put the thing in the door by designate it. Like, this is it. I'm not using this anymore for swiping. I'm using it for a door blocker. And when I close the door, I just use that thing. That's the machlokas in the Shulchan Aruch. Ideally, that's what we want to do. We want to take a non-muksa item and use it on Shabbos for something which is intrinsically muksa, and you want to use it for non-muksa purpose. You really should designate, say, like, I'm using this for a non-muksa purpose. That said, even if you don't, you can rely. The Shulchan Aruch says, in a time of need, you can rely on the more lenient opinion. Just because you used it once, that would be sufficient in that time to use it. But ideally, you want to designate. If you want to take like a rock or a card or whatever it is and use it for a non-muksa thing, you should ideally designate it for life, and that would be the right way to go about this. Okay, so we have 3 minutes. We said we're going to go back to Rav Dessler. Sorry, yesterday we did not have time, but we're still. It's really part of the piece before, all about happiness and all about benefits in this world, right? You spoke about, the last thing we spoke about was the things that take us out of benefiting a pleasure of this world, kin hatayv v'kavod. So the end of the piece, he goes on it talks about two memras. One is Gemara in Kiddushin, which says there's no reward in this world. Gemara in Kiddushin says there's no reward for mitzvah in this world. Schar mitzvah v'hayalma leika. Okay, there's no reward for this world. And you want to understand why is that? Why doesn't God reward us for mitzvos in this world? And we'll have to come back next time to understand. We're going to say in Shema in a few minutes. When you do good mitzvos, Hashem is going to reward you. So it does sound like there is reward. We'll come back to that question, God willing, in the days to come. But why is it that God doesn't reward us for mitzvos in this world? And he quotes another thing, a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which speaks about the fact. It says like this: 1 hour of satisfaction in the world to come is better than all the life of this world. 1 hour of satisfaction in the world to come in Olam Haba is better than all the life of this world. Do we do this piece? No, I'm not losing my mind. Okay, fine, sorry. What's it called? So what does this mean, that 1 hour satisfaction in the world to come is better than all the life of this world? So he says you want to do a thought experiment. All the life of this world means, think about your entire life and think about all the pleasures you've ever enjoyed in your life. And 1 moment of that, right, is greater, and 1 moment of Olam Haba is greater than all the pleasures you've ever had in your life. So imagine all the joys, all the satisfaction, all that you've ever had in your life, right? And 1 moment of Olam Haba is greater than that. But he says it's not actually what it says. It says all the life of this world. It doesn't just mean my life. It means, imagine a moment of bliss, of ecstasy, of all the pleasures, of all the joys, of all the satisfaction that everyone in the world, everyone on the planet ever experienced in 1 moment. It's like mind-blowing, right? Your head will literally explode. Not literally, but figuratively. It's like insane, right? So imagine that, and 1 moment of Olam Haba is greater than that. And he says it's not even true, because all of life of this world doesn't just mean the current generation. Think about all of history, all the satisfaction, all the accomplishments, all the great, et cetera, is equivalent to, right, is 1 moment of Olam Haba is greater, the satisfaction, the bliss is greater than that moment of all the bliss, etc., that has ever been experienced in the world. He says, now we can base that's what 1 moment of Olam Haba is, it's greater than that. So now we can understand why it is that schar mitzvah ha'al maleka, there's no reward for a mitzvah in this world, because a mitzvah, the impact of a mitzvah, it's like a mitzvah is so great. It's a mitzvah, the reward we're supposed to get for a mitzvah is an Olam Haba type of reward. So that the Olam Haba reward is something which cannot be experienced in this world. It's like if I do a mitzvah and God gives me monopoly money, if you do a job and someone gives you monopoly money, it's a joke. That's what reward in this world would be. In other words, imagine, right, someone comes to your office and you do work for them and they go, oh, here you go, give you $1,000 monopoly money and 2 houses, right? It's a joke, right? You can't, right? So that's what it'd be. In other words, we belittle, we think, okay, a mitzvah, whatever, I daven, I came to learn today, whatever it is, it's nothing. It's not, no. You have to understand there is no payment in this world that is shayach. There's no payment in the world that is possible to fulfill, to make up for what you did, and that's why it's impossible for God to reward you in this world, because it doesn't. There's nothing. There's no currency. There's no currency that's possible, and therefore it's off the table. There's no way to get reward in this world, because a moment of the world to come, i.e., payment for a mitzvah, reward for a mitzvah, for spending 25 minutes learning, for coming to chakras in the morning, the payment for such a thing is so vast, so great, that it's impossible to have reward in this world, and that's why we do not get any reward in this world. What are the rewards that the Torah speaks about? Next week's parsha, in Vayim Shemoah, what is it all about? God willing, we'll come back to in the day to come. Okay, have a great day, and don't belittle the action. A small mitzvah is just incredibly vast.